Princess Lyra of the Celestari Empire was famous across the galaxy. Her beauty was unmatched, her mind sharp and her pride unmatched even among her own people. Everywhere she went, people whispered her name with awe. Yet Lyra was more than just a pretty face. She was clever, stubborn, and fiercely independent. These traits often caused tension with the Council of Elders, who governed the Empire with strict rules. On the day that would change her life, Lyra attended a grand diplomatic ceremony in the capital city of Valaris. The ceremony was meant to celebrate a new alliance between the Celestari Empire and a minor neighboring planet. Lyra had been assigned the task of representing her people with grace, showing the strength and wisdom of her lineage. She entered the hall, her golden gown shimmering under the crystal chandeliers. Her steps were confident, her posture perfect. Diplomats from many worlds bowed as she passed. But Lyra's eyes were sharp and her mind wandered. She could see flaws in the ceremony and the speeches, even in the technology the other planets displayed. When a young ambassador from a distant planet made a minor mistake during his speech, Lyra couldn't resist correcting him publicly. Her voice rang clear, polite but firm as she pointed out the error. The room froze. Gasps echoed and whispers filled the hall. The council elders were visibly annoyed. Princess Lyra, the High Elder said after the ceremony, his voice calm but cold, "Your behavior today was inappropriate. You have embarrassed our empire before the galaxy. Such arrogance cannot go unpunished." Lyra's heart sank for a moment, but her pride refused to bow. "With respect, Elder, I only spoke the truth. Our empire must be perfect and mistakes must be corrected. That is how we grow." The High Elder's eyes narrowed. "The council has discussed your actions. A decision has been made. You will be married." To a human. Lyra blinked. At first she thought she had misunderstood. A human? Humans were considered primitive, almost like animals, by the Celestari. They lived on a small blue planet far from the Empire. Their technology was basic, their culture simple, and yet she was being forced to wed one? "No," she exclaimed. "This is impossible. I will not marry a human. I am a Celestari princess." The High Elder's expression did not change. "This is not a request, princess. It is a decree. Your marriage to this human will serve as both punishment and a lesson. You are to leave for the human's world immediately." Lyra's mind raced. How could they do this? How could her life be reduced to such a humiliation? She was furious, her hands trembling. But no one dared to argue with the council's decision. The human in question was named Ethan, a young explorer who had recently made first contact with the Celestari Empire. Ethan was intelligent, curious, and brave, but to Lyra, he was still just a human, simple, fragile, and utterly beneath her. She had no intention of respecting him or accepting her fate. When Lyra was escorted to the spacecraft that would take her to Ethan's world, she glared at the stars outside. She imagined herself trapped on a small, primitive planet, living among humans who could never understand her greatness. She would resist, she promised herself. She would never bow to a human. Ethan, on the other hand, had been preparing for the arrival of this alien princess. He had read all reports about the Celestari and knew of Lyra's reputation. He was curious, excited, and admittedly nervous. He had never met an alien of such power and beauty, and he wondered how he would interact with someone so different from himself. The first meeting took place on a neutral space station, orbiting a small, peaceful planet. The station was designed to accommodate both human and alien visitors, a neutral ground where no one would have the advantage of familiarity. Lyra arrived first, her presence commanding the room. Her long hair shimmered with colors that seemed to shift in the light, and her eyes, golden and piercing, scanned the room with suspicion. Ethan entered moments later. He was shorter than Lyra expected, with dark hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple uniform, nothing like the elaborate clothing of the Celestari. Lyra's first instinct was to scoff. How could someone so plain be considered worthy of her? "Princess Lyra," Ethan said politely, bowing slightly, "it is an honor to meet you. I hope we can work together." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Work together?" she echoed. "I am a princess of the Celestari Empire. You are a human. Do not forget your place." Ethan felt a twinge of nervousness but maintained his composure. "I am aware of our differences," he said carefully.
"But I hope we can understand each other."
"Perhaps we can learn from one another." Lyra scoffed inwardly. Learn from a human? Absurd. Still, the council had decreed it, and she had no choice but to comply. For now, Their first days on the station were tense. Lyra refused to eat human food, preferring the nutrient gels of her homeworld. She looked down on human customs, finding them crude and clumsy. Ethan, however, did not complain. He observed her carefully, noting her expressions, her gestures, and her reactions. He saw the sharp intelligence behind her cold exterior and wondered what experiences had shaped her. Despite their initial hostility, circumstances forced them to cooperate. The station required both of their skills to maintain its systems and ensure safety. Lyra's knowledge of advanced technology complemented Ethan's problem-solving skills and adaptability. Slowly, grudging respect began to form. One evening, a minor malfunction occurred in the station's power core. The alarms blared and the lights flickered. Lyra and Ethan had no choice but to work together to stabilize the system. "Move to the left panel," Lyra commanded, her voice firm. "I've got it," Ethan replied, adjusting a series of human-designed controls that Lyra initially dismissed. To her surprise, the systems began to stabilize under his hands. Lyra realized that his methods, though different, were effective. She didn't like it, but she could not deny it. Humans could think in ways Celestari could not. When the crisis passed, they stood side by side, breathing heavily. Lyra's pride was wounded by the realization that a human had helped her succeed. Yet deep down she felt a spark of curiosity, an interest in understanding this strange species that had been forced upon her. "Not bad. For a human," she muttered, her voice almost a whisper. Ethan glanced at her, surprised at the faint acknowledgement. "Thank you, Princess. That means a lot coming from you." Lyra turned away, hiding her expression. She was not ready to admit that she might be intrigued by him. She still considered the marriage a punishment, but a small seed of curiosity had been planted. Over the following days, Lyra explored the station, observing humans in their daily routines. She saw how they worked together, laughed, and cared for one another. There was something simple yet beautiful about it. She found herself watching Ethan more often than she expected, noting the way he moved, the way he thought, and the way he never gave up even in dangerous situations. One evening, Lyra sat in her private quarters staring out at the stars. She thought about the council's decree, the human she was supposed to marry, and the life she imagined would be full of humiliation and boredom. Yet for the first time she wondered what it might be like to truly understand him, to see the world through his eyes. Ethan, in his own quarters, did the same. He had been warned that humans were not considered equals by the Celestari, yet he could not help but admire Lyra's strength, intelligence, and passion. He wondered if beneath her pride there was a person who could be trusted, a person who could be a friend or more. Thus began their journey, not as lovers or friends, but as two beings forced together by fate. Each carried pride, prejudice, and uncertainty, yet each also carried the potential to see beyond what they had always believed. The punishment of marriage had begun, but it was clear that neither Lyra nor Ethan would remain the same. The stars outside the station glimmered, endless and mysterious. Lyra clenched her fists, a mixture of defiance and curiosity in her heart. She was a Celestari princess used to control and power, yet now she was learning that there were other ways to measure strength. And perhaps, just perhaps, the human beside her might teach her something the council never could. The first part of their story ended not with triumph or acceptance, but with the quiet tension of two worlds colliding. And in that tension, the spark of something unexpected began to glow. A spark that could change not just their lives, but the future of the galaxy itself. The first week on the neutral space station passed slowly for Princess Lyra. Every day was a challenge, and every interaction with Ethan seemed to highlight the differences between their worlds. She had expected humans to be clumsy, weak, and unimaginative, but each day he surprised her, and that only made her pride bristle. Lyra woke every morning in her luxurious quarters, the walls glowing with soft light, and the floor covered in self-cleaning panels. Ethan's living space, in contrast, was simple and practical. It lacked beauty or elegance, but it was functional. He spent hours each day maintaining it, arranging his belongings and checking his equipment. Lyra watched him once from her balcony, noting the careful way he handled even the simplest task. "How can he be so careful about everything?" she muttered to herself. "Humans waste so much energy on trivial things." Yet despite her judgment, she could not ignore his skill. When the station's systems needed manual recalibration, He moved with precision and confidence. Lyra's own training in advanced celestiary technology gave her speed and power, but Ethan had a different kind of intelligence. He solved problems in ways she had never considered. One morning, their first real challenge arose. The station's hydroponic gardens, responsible for producing food for all visitors, developed a sudden malfunction. The plants were wilting, and sensors indicated that nutrient levels were dangerously low. Without intervention, the food supply could fail within hours. Lyra arrived at the garden, her expression sharp and commanding. Ethan was already there, checking the nutrient distribution system. "You humans really have a strange way of managing things," Lyra said, her tone dripping with disdain.
Why is it all so
inefficient? Ethan looked up calmly. "It may seem inefficient, Princess, but this method works with the plants we have here. It's adaptable." Lyra frowned. "Adaptable? That sounds primitive. On Celestari, we do not rely on trial and error." Ethan smiled slightly. "Sometimes trial and error leads to solutions that pure logic cannot see." Lyra paused, considering his words. It was an unfamiliar thought. That imperfection could lead to success. She had spent her life believing that precision and rules were everything, yet here was a human, proving that flexibility had its own power. Together they worked to stabilize the gardens. Lyra handled the advanced controls, rerouting energy and adjusting nutrient flows, while Ethan tended to the plants directly, improvising solutions as problems arose. Hours passed, and slowly the plants began to recover. "You humans are stubborn," Lyra admitted, her voice quiet. "I did not expect this level of determination." Ethan looked up, smiling. "We learn to survive with what we have. Sometimes that means stubbornness." Lyra did not respond immediately. Her mind was racing. She could not admit it aloud, but there was a growing sense of respect for this human who refused to give up. Their days were filled with small conflicts and unexpected lessons. Lyra tried to teach Ethan Celestari etiquette, explaining their customs, traditions, and the expectations of her empire. Ethan listened patiently, sometimes fumbling with gestures or pronunciations, yet never showing frustration. One evening, Lyra demonstrated a formal greeting, her hands moving in intricate patterns while her voice followed precise tones. Ethan attempted to mimic her, twisting his fingers awkwardly and speaking the words off-key. Lyra could not help but laugh, a sound so rare that it startled even her. "You humans, you are hopeless at some things," she said, smiling despite herself. "But amusing." Ethan bowed lightly. "I will take that as a compliment, Princess." Despite the humor, Lyra noticed something else. Ethan's patience, his willingness to learn, and his ability to adapt. Humans were clumsy in some ways, yes, but resilient in ways her people often overlooked. They had to fight for survival in ways Celestari rarely did, and that gave them a strength she could not ignore. Their cultural clash reached a peak during the station's recreation hours. Lyra tried a human game, something called strategy board simulation, which involved resource management and quick thinking. At first, she approached it with contempt, expecting it to be simple and childish. But soon she realized that the game required cleverness, adaptability, and risk-taking, skills humans had mastered out of necessity. Ethan played alongside her, calmly explaining the rules and suggesting strategies. Lyra initially ignored him, insisting that her Celestari instincts were superior. But when she made a critical mistake, Ethan gently corrected her, showing a solution she had not considered. "You humans are unpredictable," she muttered, frustration mixed with awe. "Your logic. It is not like ours, but it works," Ethan grinned. "Unpredictable can be an advantage sometimes." Lyra had to admit it silently. Humans had a creativity and flexibility that Celestari training could not provide. She was beginning to see that being forced to interact with Ethan was more than just punishment. It was a lesson she never asked for, yet needed. Even their meals became a source of cultural clash. Lyra was used to nutrient gels and perfectly balanced supplements, while Ethan enjoyed flavors, textures, and the simple joy of eating. He offered her a piece of fruit one day, explaining its taste and origin. Lyra reluctantly tried it and was surprised to find the sweetness and aroma delightful. She had never experienced food in this way before, and the small pleasure puzzled her. "Curious," she said, placing the fruit down. "And I did not expect enjoyment from something so simple." Ethan laughed. "Humans often find joy in the small things, Princess. Perhaps you are beginning to understand." Lyra looked away, hiding the faint smile that threatened to appear. She did not want to admit that she was learning to appreciate human experiences. Yet she could not deny the curiosity growing inside her. A desire to understand, to observe, and perhaps even to participate. Their interactions were not always smooth. Arguments flared over protocol, traditions, and what each considered proper behavior. Lyra scolded Ethan for bending the rules too often, while he questioned the rigidity of her customs. They clashed, yes, but each disagreement taught them something about the other. Through it all, Lyra began to notice subtle qualities in Ethan that no human report had prepared her for. His courage in small challenges, his creativity in problem-solving, and his unwavering optimism in the face of uncertainty. She could see why the council had chosen him as her partner. He was ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in ways that mattered. One day, a minor emergency forced them to leave the station and travel to a nearby asteroid field to retrieve critical data. The journey was dangerous, requiring navigation through narrow passages and asteroid collisions. Lyra piloted their ship with precision, but Ethan's quick thinking prevented several near disasters. "Careful with that trajectory," he said calmly. "We can't take the same path as before. It's too risky." Lyra hesitated but followed his advice. The maneuver succeeded, and they emerged from the asteroid field unharmed. She could not hide her admiration. "You humans, you may be clumsy, but you are clever," she admitted quietly. Ethan looked at her surprised. "Thank you, Princess. That means more than you know." For the first time, Lyra felt something unfamiliar. Respect, mingled with curiosity and a hint of warmth. She did not understand it fully, but she knew it was real. As the days turned into weeks, their bond began to shift. Lyra was still proud, still stubborn, but she was learning. She was beginning to see that humans, despite their simplicity, possessed qualities her empire often overlooked: resilience, creativity, courage, and the ability to find joy in small moments. Ethan, in turn, continued to learn from Lyra. He marveled at her intelligence, her discipline, and the way she carried herself with grace. He understood that she was not cruel, only bound by her upbringing and the expectations of her people. He admired her for it, and slowly a quiet friendship began to form between them. By the end of the second part of their journey, the first cracks in Lyra's pride had appeared. She still saw herself as superior, but she could no longer deny the truth. Humans were not weak. They were strong in ways that mattered, and Ethan was the perfect example. The cultural clash had begun as tension, frustration, and judgment, but it was evolving. Curiosity had replaced disdain, respect had replaced ridicule, and a faint sense of connection was forming. Lyra did not know what the future held. She still resented the council, the forced marriage, and the humiliation. Yet she could not ignore the small spark inside her, a spark of interest, of fascination, and perhaps even admiration for the human who challenged her in every way. And Ethan, ever patient, continued to show her the best of humanity: courage, cleverness, and an optimism that refused to be extinguished. Together they were learning, growing, and discovering that differences could be strengths when combined. The galaxy outside the station continued its endless dance of stars, planets, and possibilities. Within the station, two beings from different worlds were beginning to understand one another. Their journey had only just begun, and the lessons of patience, respect, and unexpected friendship were only the first steps toward something much greater. The calm routine of life on the space station was broken one quiet morning. A fleet of unknown ships appeared on the station's radar, moving fast and in formation. They were not friendly. The station's alarms blared, and every inhabitant scrambled to safety. Princess Lyra's first instinct was to command, to take control as she had done her entire life. But the situation was unfamiliar. The ships were aggressive, and their technology, though advanced, was unpredictable. Even the Celestari defense systems were struggling to respond. Lyra's pride burned within her, but she realized she could not face this threat alone. Ethan was already at the command center, coordinating the station's response. He was calm, speaking to engineers and security personnel with confidence. Lyra approached him, her expression sharp. "We must evacuate civilians immediately," she said, her voice tense but controlled. "I agree," Ethan replied. "We need a plan to protect the station while ensuring no one is harmed." "I need your help, Princess." Lyra frowned, surprise flashing in her eyes. Her pride resisted the idea of taking instructions from a human, yet she knew he was right. Together they moved quickly, issuing commands and coordinating teams. The first wave of attackers struck the station's outer defenses. Laser beams cut through space, igniting small fires on the station's hull. Lyra's knowledge of advanced alien technology allowed her to redirect energy shields and repair critical systems on the fly. Ethan, using his human ingenuity, suggested unconventional strategies, rerouting power through backup channels, using the station's modules to block attacks, and guiding civilian shuttles through safer paths. Lyra was astonished. His solutions were not elegant like Celestari technology. They were rough, improvisational, but they worked. They saved lives. The combination of her precision and his creativity proved more effective than either could have achieved alone. As the battle raged on, Lyra found herself watching Ethan in awe. He moved swiftly, calculating risks, making split-second decisions that saved both people and equipment. He was not just surviving, he was thriving under pressure. Humans, she realized, were not fragile. They were resilient, adaptable, and brave in ways her people rarely experienced. A critical moment arrived when one of the attackers breached the station's outer ring. A small strike team of aliens boarded the station, threatening civilian lives. Lyra grabbed a plasma tool, preparing to confront them. Ethan joined her, his hand steady on a weapon he had never used before. "Follow my lead," Lyra whispered. Together, they navigated the corridors, moving through dark passages and using quick thinking to outmaneuver the intruders. Lyra's speed and skill complemented Ethan's ingenuity. Where she relied on precise attacks, he used traps, diversions, and clever tactics to gain advantage. They found themselves in the central control room, cornered by the enemy. Lyra's heart raced, but she noticed Ethan's calm determination. He did not panic. He assessed the situation, then spoke quickly. "We can use the security doors to trap them. You activate the barrier panels, I'll guide the civilians out through the side corridor." Lyra hesitated for a moment. This was risky, even by Celestari standards, but Ethan's confidence inspired her. Together they executed the plan. The intruders were trapped and civilians escaped safely. When the chaos finally ended, the attackers retreated. The station was damaged, but no lives were lost. Lyra and Ethan stood in the control room, breathing heavily. She looked at him, something unspoken passing between them. "You humans," she began but stopped. Words failed her. Ethan smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "We did well, together." Lyra's pride warred with her admiration. She was used to being in control, to having all solutions at her command, yet she could not deny that without Ethan, many would have died. For the first time, she acknowledged that humans were not merely simple beings. They were strong, clever, and capable. The aftermath of the attack left the station in chaos. Repairs were underway and civilians were shaken but safe. Lyra found herself walking alongside Ethan, observing the damage and the people recovering from the ordeal. "You humans, you have a strange way of thinking," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her, curious. "Strange? How do you mean?" "You do not panic, even in danger. You improvise. You care for others in ways I have not seen before. It is admirable." Ethan's expression softened. "That is what humans do, Princess. We survive together. We protect each other. It is not always easy, but it works." Lyra nodded, silently acknowledging the truth. She realized that survival, courage, and ingenuity were not measured by appearance or status. They were measured by actions. Humans, in their own way, had a strength her people had long overlooked. Over the next days, Lyra and Ethan spent time repairing the station and ensuring that all systems were functional. Their interactions grew more natural. Lyra began to ask for Ethan's opinion, not just in emergencies, but in everyday tasks. She noticed that his insights were often unconventional but effective. One afternoon, they worked together in the station's observatory, analyzing the data from the attack. Lyra was focused on technical details, while Ethan suggested patterns and strategies that she had not considered. "Your perspective, it is different," Lyra admitted. "Humans see things in ways we do not. Perhaps that is a strength," Ethan smiled. "We learn from our mistakes and from each other. Maybe you are learning that too, Princess." Lyra did not respond immediately. She was not ready to admit how much she was learning, not just about humans, but about herself. Her world had always been rigid, structured, and predictable. Ethan's presence introduced unpredictability and with it, growth. As the days passed, small moments of connection began to form. Lyra caught herself observing Ethan's gestures, the way he solved problems, and even the way he laughed at simple things. She resisted the thought, reminding herself that she was a Celestari princess above humans. Yet the curiosity persisted. One evening, as they reviewed security logs together, Ethan noticed a pattern in the attackers' movements that Lyra had overlooked. "See here," he said, pointing at the display. "They favor predictable routes. If we anticipate their strategy, we can strengthen the station's defenses for the future." Lyra studied the data, impressed. "I did not see that. You are correct. Your thinking is valuable," Ethan nodded. "Thank you, Princess. That means a lot." For the first time, Lyra felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's artificial lights. It was not anger, not pride, it was respect, admiration, and a hint of something she could not yet name. She did not understand it fully, but it was real. The bond between them grew quietly, built on trust and shared experience. They were no longer just two beings forced together by the Council's decree. They were partners relying on each other, learning from each other, and discovering that cooperation could achieve what neither could accomplish alone. Lyra reflected on her people's view of humans. They had always been considered weak, primitive, and inferior. Yet here was Ethan, a human, who had proven bravery, intelligence, and ingenuity beyond what many Celestari could achieve. She began to wonder what other qualities humans possessed that her people had ignored. Ethan, for his part, was beginning to understand Lyra in ways no one had prepared him for. He saw past her pride and her sharp exterior, glimpsing the person beneath. Intelligent, passionate, and capable of great growth. He admired her for her strength, but he also knew that beneath the perfection she displayed, she was learning to trust and to rely on others. One quiet night, after the station had stabilized, Lyra and Ethan walked together on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a tapestry of light and mystery. "You humans, you are more than I expected," Lyra said softly. Ethan smiled. "And you, Princess, are more than I expected as well. You are strong, clever, and capable. I am honored to work with you." Lyra looked at him, her pride softening for a moment. She did not speak, but inside, a realization began to grow. Perhaps the Council's punishment was not just humiliation. It was a chance for understanding, growth, and even friendship. The stars outside shimmered, endless and unyielding. Within the station, two beings from different worlds had faced danger, shared challenges, and discovered respect for each other. The first seeds of friendship had taken root, and with them, the possibility of something greater, trust, connection, and perhaps even admiration. The galaxy continued its silent dance, vast and unpredictable. Lyra and Ethan, bound by circumstance but united by courage and intellect, had discovered that differences could be strengths, and that humans, despite what her people believed, were remarkable in ways the Celestari could never fully imagine. And in that discovery, a quiet bond began, a bond that neither pride nor decree could undo. The message from the Council had arrived late in the night, just as the station's artificial sky shifted into a dim twilight. A new mission awaited. A distant planet on the edge of their star system contained a lost research facility, rumored to hold ancient technology. This facility had never been fully explored, and the Council wanted Lyra and Ethan to investigate it. Lyra felt a mixture of pride and annoyance. "Another mission," she muttered, brushing her hair back. "Why do they insist on sending me to dangerous places?" Ethan, packing supplies for the journey, glanced up. "They trust us because we work well together. And this planet, it could hold important knowledge. We might find technology that could benefit both our worlds." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I suppose it is. Not entirely useless." The journey in their small research craft was long and tense. The planet below was shrouded in a pale blue mist with jagged mountains rising like frozen waves. Strange weather patterns shimmered across its surface, and occasional flashes of lightning revealed massive structures hidden beneath the clouds. Lyra watched silently, her usual composure giving way to a rare sense of awe. Ethan observed the terrain on the holographic display. "We must land carefully. The gravity is slightly higher than standard, and the surface seems unstable in areas." Lyra nodded, her hand steady on the controls. "Agreed. Follow my lead, human. They touched down near a partially collapsed structure. The air was breathable but thin, and the temperature fluctuated rapidly. As they stepped onto the planet, Lyra felt the crunch of unfamiliar soil beneath her feet. Ethan moved beside her, scanning the area for threats. This place. It is ancient, Lyra said softly. I did not expect humans to survive here so easily. Ethan smiled. We adapt, we learn. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Their first challenge came quickly. The entryway to the facility was blocked by a heavy, alien-designed gate. Lyra attempted to override it using her Celestari skills, manipulating the advanced control panels. Yet the gate resisted. Stand back, Lyra said, frustration creeping into her voice. Ethan studied the mechanism. He noticed patterns in the wiring and energy flow that Lyra had overlooked. Try rerouting the auxiliary conduits first, he suggested. It might trigger a secondary control sequence. Lyra followed his instructions. Slowly, the gate began to shift, creaking as it opened. She couldn't hide her surprise. I did not expect that. Well done, human, Ethan shrugged. Sometimes a fresh perspective helps. Your methods are impressive, but a second approach can complement them. Inside, the facility was vast and mysterious. Hallways stretched endlessly, lined with glowing symbols and unknown devices. Lyra marveled at the ancient technology, some of which predated even the earliest Celestari records. Ethan moved carefully, observing and recording every detail, while Lyra deciphered complex symbols and patterns. Hours passed as they explored, mapping the facility and discovering storage units containing devices designed to enhance energy efficiency, communication, and even defensive systems. Some technology was dangerous, requiring precise knowledge to manipulate. Here their cooperation became essential. Lyra's expertise allowed her to understand the mechanisms, while Ethan's creativity enabled them to adapt the devices safely. During a brief break in one of the observation chambers, they looked out at the alien horizon. Strange colors danced across the sky and distant lightning illuminated the jagged landscape. This planet, it is beautiful in a way humans rarely see, Ethan said quietly. Lyra nodded, her pride softening. Yes, it is alive. I can feel it. The energy here is different. They shared a rare moment of silence, understanding forming in the quiet space between them. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to appreciate the human beside her, not as someone inferior but as a partner, equal in curiosity and determination. Their next challenge was the facility's central chamber, where a massive device hummed with dormant energy. Lyra immediately recognized its purpose, a control hub capable of manipulating planetary systems. Yet activating it was complex. One wrong move could trigger a catastrophic reaction. Ethan stepped forward. We need to approach this carefully. Split tasks but communicate constantly. They worked side by side for hours. Lyra adjusted energy flows with precise movements while Ethan calculated variable patterns and suggested safety measures. Gradually, the device began to power up. A soft hum filled the chamber and a holographic map of the planet appeared, displaying energy nodes, weather patterns, and geological structures. Lyra's eyes widened. This is incredible. Humans could use this to stabilize harsh environments on your world. Ethan smiled. And your people could benefit too. Together we can make this work for everyone. For the first time, Lyra truly understood the value of human ingenuity. It was not about physical strength or technological superiority. It was about creativity, adaptability, and the ability to find solutions in unexpected ways. As they worked, they shared stories. Lyra spoke of her upbringing in the Celestari Empire, the pressures of perfection, and the isolation that came with her status. Ethan shared tales of his life on Earth, the challenges of being human in a vast galaxy, and the moments that had shaped him. By the end of the mission, they had not only activated the facility safely, but also formed a bond built on mutual respect and trust. Lyra no longer saw Ethan as merely a human. He was a partner, a thinker, and someone whose courage and intelligence matched her own. As they prepared to return to the station, Lyra glanced at Ethan. Perhaps this punishment was not entirely punishment after all. Ethan nodded, understanding her unspoken meaning. They had faced danger together, learned from each other, and discovered the value of cooperation between their worlds. The journey had changed them both, and for the first time Lyra felt a small, quiet pleasure. not of pride but of connection, understanding, and shared achievement. The return journey to the station was filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Lyra and Ethan had completed their mission on the distant planet, uncovering technology that could benefit both humans and Celestari. Yet the greater discovery was not the devices they had found. It was the trust, respect, and understanding they had developed. Lyra, once proud and dismissive of humans, now viewed Ethan as a partner, a thinker, and an equal. She reflected on how much she had learned from him: patience, resilience, and the courage to approach problems in unconventional ways. Humans, she realized, were remarkable not because of technology or status, but because of their adaptability and determination. Back at the station, the council awaited their report. Lyra and Ethan presented the findings, carefully explaining the potential applications of the technology. The council listened, impressed by their collaboration and the safe activation of the ancient facility. "You have exceeded our expectations," the High Elder said. "It appears that humans may possess qualities our empire has long overlooked. Your partnership demonstrates the strength of cooperation between worlds." Lyra's chest swelled with pride, but it was different now. This pride was tempered with humility, respect, and a quiet satisfaction. She glanced at Ethan, who nodded subtly, acknowledging the unspoken bond they shared. Over the following days, life on the station settled into a new rhythm. Lyra and Ethan continued to work together, their partnership now based on mutual trust rather than duty. They shared meals, laughed at small human customs, and supported each other through minor crises. The initial tension of their forced marriage had transformed into something meaningful: friendship, respect, and a sense of harmony. One evening, Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars. Ethan joined her, holding a small device that projected a holographic map of the galaxy. "Do you ever wonder what else is out there?" he asked. Lyra smiled faintly. "Every day, and now. I wonder who I can explore it with." Ethan glanced at her, understanding her meaning. "Perhaps together we can discover more than either of us could alone." Lyra nodded. She remembered the pride that had once burned so fiercely within her, the arrogance that had led the council to punish her with this marriage. Yet now she understood that true strength was not measured by status, appearance, or control. It was measured by courage, empathy, and the ability to see value in others. The days passed, and the bond between Lyra and Ethan grew stronger. They faced new challenges, navigated diplomatic tensions, and continued to explore the mysteries of the galaxy. Lyra found joy in simple moments: a shared laugh, a successful experiment, or a quiet evening under alien skies. She realized that pleasure could come from connection, understanding, and the knowledge that two beings from different worlds could work together toward a greater good. The council, observing their success, began to reconsider the value of humans. Lyra became an advocate for stronger cooperation, explaining that humans possessed qualities that complemented Celestari's strength. Her experience with Ethan had shown her that empathy, creativity, and determination were just as vital as advanced technology. By the time their mission concluded, Lyra no longer felt punished. She had grown, learned, and discovered that humans were extraordinary in their own right, and more importantly, she had discovered that companionship, respect, and trust could bring a unique and lasting pleasure that no decree or status could provide. As Lyra and Ethan stood together on the observation deck one final time before returning to their respective worlds, the stars stretched endlessly before them. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. "Thank you, Ethan," she said softly, "for showing me what humans can be and for showing me what true partnership means." Ethan smiled warmly. "And thank you, Princess, for trusting me, for learning with me, and for showing that even the greatest pride can open to something new." They looked out at the galaxy, two beings from different worlds who had learned to respect, trust, and care for each other. Their journey had begun as punishment, yet it had transformed into an unexpected adventure, one filled with discovery, growth, and the quiet pleasures of understanding and connection. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries yet to explore, but Lyra and Ethan knew that together they could face anything, and that humanity, in all its ingenuity and courage, had a place among the stars. And so, their story ended not with conflict or resentment, but with harmony, respect, and the shared joy of two worlds united by discovery, friendship, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.